Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, our buddy John Steppe. Here in just a moment, I'll get to John. But to set up the rest of the show for you today, Sean Bock will join us from 24/7 Sports, a CBS sports affiliate. Recruiting still going on at Iowa. Men's basketball, women's basketball. Bluter's Bunch gets a very nice big-named recruit committing to the Hawkeyes, and can't wait to talk to Sean about that, as well as a big weekend for the Hawkeyes with recruits coming in as well for football. So we'll get to Sean Bock, and then we'll close out the show, as usual, with quarterback James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, talking about the quarterback, Cade McNamara, and the offense. Hopefully James has some answers, but a lot going on. So that being said, I bring up John Steppe. John is a beat writer for Iowa Hawkeyes Athletics with Gazette.com, Cedar Rapids Gazette. Pick up a print copy. You'll see John, Sean, and James's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine throughout this program. So pause it there if you need to find their handiwork. It's linked on social media as well. So John, as always, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Great seeing you.
Great to see you as well.
Well, I mentioned that, and you kind of chuckle, as do I. You got any answers for us? Last week, more than 3-1 time, or almost 3-1, so 45 plus minutes for possession for Penn State. A little less than 15 minutes for the Hawkeyes, 14:45. Almost triple plays, I believe. It's like 97-33, something like that, offense to offense. That Hawkeye defense has to be a little bit tired, not excusing anyone's performance. But to say that offense was listless and lifeless would be an understatement. So obviously there's a lot going on with Michigan State. Mel Tucker was released earlier today from his duties, and we know this is Wednesday, September 27th, as we record this in the afternoon. So sometimes you see something like this galvanize a team, although it's certainly the whole turmoil all season long has not worked for Michigan State. And really, from the very beginning with Mel Tucker, had a nice year there after COVID when he came in. But I'll tell you, John, this may be a good time for them to say, let's play a football game and get this out of our way. What are your thoughts on this with Michigan State coming into town against the Hawkeyes on national television, by the way, this Saturday night, 6:30 kick on NBC?
Yeah, a lot of things that kind of come to mind for me. One interesting thing that we'll probably know more by the time that this airs is we're 4 games in. Players can redshirt after playing 4 games. So I'll be curious to see, okay, do you have some transfer decisions? All of a sudden, do you have some players who are not playing who otherwise might? Because that is one factor to keep in mind whenever you do have a coaching change where that happens mid-season, particularly 4 games in, because you have players who can still preserve that eligibility. It's certainly a tough circumstance, a tough set of circumstances that Michigan State is having to deal with. They've got the 2 wins against 2 not super great teams, and then when they play against Power 5 competition, it's been a rough sight for them. Against a very good Washington team, they lose big, and then against Maryland, they also lose big. So this is a team in turmoil, and you're going kind of from one extreme to the other in terms of difficulty. With a Penn State team that was ranked number 7 at the time, that could be in contention for a Big Ten title, for a college football playoff spot potentially, to now Michigan State, which is in some years, you'd say as much turmoil as anybody in the Big Ten. This year, it's a little more debatable who has the most turmoil, but certainly a rocky situation there, and should be a game that Iowa will be heavily favored in.
It wasn't the great whiteout at Penn State. It was the great wipeout, 31-0 and in every aspect of the game, but a lot of uncharacteristic Kirk Ferentz Hawkeye teams, circumstances that happened with turnovers, penalties, losing their cool in certain spots from players you wouldn't expect. I think to say it was a frustrating night all the way around, John, would be an understatement.
Yeah, you look at offense, there were a lot of struggles. Defense had some struggles in the second half. Special teams had some struggles. So really, it's hard to hang your hat on one positive from that game. And of course, Iowa has lost big before. This isn't something that's totally never seen before.
Right.
But still, when you lose a game that badly, it's usually not a great sign in terms of, you look at, okay, they lost by 44 to Ohio State last year, but we're talking about an 8-5 season that year.
Yeah.
And of course, 2004 was the exception to that, where they get blown out, I think it's against Arizona State, and then they go on and had a really special season there. But oftentimes, it can be maybe not the best sign for Iowa. And yeah, certainly frustration there. I don't think there's any aspect of the game that Kirk Ferentz was happy with. I think a lot of the frustration from the fans, understandably, is focused on the offense. when with that time of possession and play discrepancy, it's no surprise that the defense is eventually going to have some challenges.
Well, and I want to get to yesterday's presser on Tuesday. John, for the fans' perspective, for me, I get it. You're not going to want to try to change anything wholesale. But when he said to you, well, everything was bad, we want to improve everything. I know you were looking for more of an answer. So where do they go from here? What are some of your thoughts that you're hearing from other either coaches or players around the facility?
So, to first recap the press conference, no magic answers was the line that Kirk Ferentz had, where you're not going to have all of a sudden a new playbook. I think it would be helpful if fans were able to hear, okay, they're going to try to emphasize this part of the playbook a little more, or do this or do that. And Kirk Ferentz is not going to give that answer.
24 plus years we've been doing it this way. We're not going to change now. And again, I get all that, but like you said, it'd fall on a little bit nicer ears if he were to say something different.
And of course, there's still nothing ruling out that they could emphasize different parts of the playbook. But if so, we're not hearing about it right now.
And I get that you don't want to give it away, right?
Yeah.
But, that drive for 325, it's very public. Beth Getz, they are now below the 25-point average per game. After 4 games, they're at like 21.3 points average a game. So there is a lot to consider and a lot looking at what's ahead here. But it is interesting when you ask a lot of the players and in yourself, when you ask Coach Ferentz, again, I get that there's not going to be a wholesale change, but we need to look at some other things. Obviously, I know it doesn't help having Luke Lachey injured, but there's a lot of other talent and running backs. Can we get an update? Obviously, Luke is gone for the year, had surgery last week. What about Jazz Patterson and also in reference to Caleb Johnson? Any more updates on that, please?
Yeah, they're on a week-to-week basis right now, so we know for sure that they're not going to be playing against Michigan State this week. As for Purdue next week or Wisconsin the week after, still TBD on that. So that's going to be let's see what happens on every Monday depth chart, what happens with every Tuesday news conference. We'll probably get updates week to week on when they'll actually be available. But so still a lot up in the air. As you mentioned, Luke Lachey, most likely done for the season, needed surgery, certainly a big loss. So in terms of the running back room in the meantime, Sean Williams is kind of the guy. And Kamari Moulton, Terrell Washington, the 2 true freshmen, have been getting some nice time. They showed some flashes of what they can do against Western Michigan. Obviously, a true freshman going up against number 7 Penn State, you aren't going to see those same results. But we could be seeing more of Moulton, more of Washington really in the meantime until Johnson and Patterson can recover from their lower leg injuries.
So any other tidbits that we've left on the ground here, or is it time just to move on, tee it up, and let's flush that Penn State game out of our system and get ready for Michigan State?
I'd emphasize that the schedule really changes here. Where you're going from, I was mentioning Michigan State not being the toughest team, but you really look at the rest of the schedule, and all of those are winnable games. That does not mean that they're going to win all of them, but they are all winnable. And you look at the rest of the Big Ten West, you've got a lot of new first-year coaches in there. Wisconsin has looked good at points, but they've also had their adversity that they've experienced. And you look at the crossover, the 2 other crossover opponents. You've got Michigan State from the East, as we've been talking about. You've got Rutgers from the East. This is really a favorable schedule for Iowa. So if things all of a sudden start to look earth-shatteringly good after earth-shatteringly bad, that could happen because of just the way this schedule goes. And it's a long season.
And to your point, unlike last year, no Michigan or Ohio State on the schedule. So this was the toughest of all the crossover games into the East in the last year of these type of divisions, with the addition now of USC and UCLA. And there's a lot going to change. So this is the opportunity this year. So take it while they can. That's for certain. I'm really glad you pointed that out. Great stuff as always from you. Folks, he's John Steppe, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes from the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Gazette.com. John, as always, thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. For John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more Hawkeye and Sean Bock and James Vandenberg in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. You can see our buddy Sean Bock here, going to join us in just a second. Sean was CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports recruiting expert. I'm going to talk a lot of recruiting today with Sean. But after Sean, we have one more segment left, and that'll be with James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback. Much more to discuss in this program. Sean, as always, great seeing you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dave.
My pleasure as always. So, Sean, let's get to it right away. Big recruiting news. Let's start with Bluter's bunch today. Then we'll talk about Fran McCaffrey's guys or potential new guys. Big recruit this weekend for visits for the Michigan State game on the Iowa Hawkeye football sideline. But A.J. Guyton, a former Hoosier basketball playing great, his daughter commits to the Iowa Hawkeyes and said she can't wait to play for Coach Bluter. Great stuff.
I mean, Aaliyah Guyton, I think that's how you pronounce her
Yep.
first name. I was watching some film of her this morning. She's a hooper. She kind of looks like she has like a little bit of a blend of a Kathleen Doyle, Alexis Civilian type game. I mean, I'm not an expert in the scouting game, but just watching those 3 or 4 minute highlights, she looked pretty good. She's got some grit to her coming from Peoria, so that's always a plus. And I mean, you have 2 Peoria kids coming in the next couple classes for Iowa basketball and for women's and men's, so it's not a bad pipeline.
Yeah, Cooper Koch will be coming in on the men's side. But, yeah, so big gift for Coach Bluter, and, my goodness, let's keep it rolling on that. The rich got to keep getting richer, and, of course, we're getting ready for that game against DePaul in Kinnick Stadium for Bluter's bunch in October, so we'll talk about that as the weeks come up as well. And, Sean, we got another, and so thank you for your insights there. But, yeah, if you folks remember, A.J. Guyton was quite the hooper, as you mentioned with his daughter, but A.J. was quite the hooper for the Hoosiers men's program back in the day. Let's talk Fran McCaffrey bringing guys in for his basketball program, and then we'll talk about who's going to be on the sideline visiting the Iowa Hawkeye football team this weekend. But let's talk men's basketball first.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Cooper Koch a lot in this show. Obviously, he's been in the class for quite some time now, and, a year and a half later, they picked up their second commit in this 2024 class, and Chris Taggio, a 6'8" big man, kind of forward hybrid type, out of the NBA Latin Academy in Mexico. He's actually Canadian, played his first couple years in Canada, grew up in Canada, but then went down to Mexico to play for one of the NBA Academy teams. So he's a little bit more of a raw prospect. He's not going to give you a lot on the offensive end, I think, his first couple years, but there's a lot of length there and a lot of tools to, really see this Iowa staff develop him and help him grow. He's really athletic, really long, can rebound just as well as anybody. Plays above the rim, can take guys off the dribble, is developing a little bit more of an offensive game, but where he's really going to provide that need is that 4 or 5 position, potentially as a small ball 5. So he's a really good get for Iowa. They kind of keep things quiet up there or down there in terms of recruiting. So I think Akron was really involved with him. TCU and Xavier were showing a lot of interest too, but Iowa got him on an official visit pretty quietly a couple weeks ago, and we're able to get him a couple days later. So that's a big commitment right there. And then they have another official visitor this weekend in the 2024 class in Farrell Compton, who is actually plays out in Las Vegas. His high school ball in Las Vegas, has been on the West Coast for a couple years, but is actually from the Chicago area. So he would have gone to Simeon Career Academy, a big-time program in the Chicagoland, or in the city of Chicago. And Iowa's competing against LSU, San Diego State, and UNLV for Compton. And Compton's a little bit kind of a similar player as Taggio, but he's more well-rounded, more put together from a skill perspective. Really athletic, physical, strong, great hands. But he's around 6'7", 6'8", and kind of plays that small ball 5. He's kind of like a Draymond Green type have a lazy comparison to him. So he's a really good player, and Iowa thinks that he can be a really dynamic forward in this 2024 class to pair with Taggio and Koch. So we'll see what happens this weekend, but I'm intrigued. It's one of those recruitments where, you kind of feel like you have a feel for it, but you never might know what's going to happen.
To your point, and to Fran's recruiting, that's the way college basketball is going. That's where the NBA has gone. The real true center, the Luka Garza, that seems long ago and far away, because you mentioned all these small ball 5s, all these 6'7", 6'8", Luka or Philip Robracha type. But some of these guys bringing in more of an offensive game, although Philip had some pretty good offensive games, but if you can rebound, run the floor, get that ball out, that obviously is what Fran's going to, and a lot of college basketball. great insights there, and recruiting expert extraordinaire here, Sean, really has. I love the fact that you talk to a lot of these kids or their parents and their coaches, so you're really tuned into that, plugged in. So let's talk football. Who's going to be on the sideline for the Hawkeyes this weekend as visitors?
Yeah, they'll have a bunch of their 2024 commits in. You never want to stop recruiting those guys, especially with the caliber of talent that they have and how things have really risen.
Hopefully Nick Brooks will be right real close to everybody's side, right?
Yeah. They'll have a couple big 2025 targets in. West Des Moines Valley wide receiver Xavier Robinson, who is out for the year with a torn labrum. Iowa's going up against Iowa State and Missouri there. Missouri's making a big run at him. So that'll be a school to watch. The Algona duo of quarterback Alex Mansky and Jack Limbaugh, two guys that are high on Iowa's target board. They'll be in town. Iowa's going up against, the usual regional foes for those guys, Iowa State, Nebraska, Kansas State, a few of those programs. And then they'll have a few other guys in town. They'll have a couple of linebackers from the state of Illinois. Dominic Hulak from Immaculate Conception in Elmhurst. One of his coaches is actually Matt Bowen, a former Iowa defensive back. And then Burt Goucher from Sycamore, a kid that Iowa really likes. Iowa's battling Brett Belima for him in the Illini, so a little bit of a border war for him. So those are a couple names to watch. I mean, Mason Woods from Iowa City West, LeVar Sun will probably be in town too. There'll be a few other notable names, I think, that kind of just show up out of nowhere, and maybe some offers go out this weekend. They're really evaluating Malachi Kirby from Hawkeyed, a defensive end, outside linebacker prospect who is actually the son of former Iowa State defensive lineman Brent Kirby. So it's gonna be a pretty loaded sideline. I think there'll be a couple big time football guys, and then like I said with Compton, then Iowa basketball is also hosting a couple guys from the Hoosier State too. So there will be their fair share of. I'll be busy taking pictures on the sideline. That's for sure.
You always are, and that's why we love having you in. If not at least once a month or every couple of weeks, because this is that time of year. And like you said, even with recruits they have in house, they still want to keep them close by and say, "Hey, we haven't forgotten about you. Don't forget about us." So he is Sean Bock with CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports recruiting expert. Again, you see all of Sean's information at the bottom of the screen, along with mine throughout this segment. Looking forward to catching up with Sean in a few weeks. So Sean, as always, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. For Sean Bock, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more to close out the show at Hawkeyed with James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, in just a few moments.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seed company that's chasing technology, or a seed company that's writing a book on it? Mershman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here you see our buddy James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, joining us. James, a lot going on this week, and as always, thanks for joining us. Tough week at Happy Valley. Was not so Happy Valley as you and I talked about last week. It can be quite an experience, and it certainly was for the Hawks. Maybe not a great experience, obviously, with the 31-0 defeat. National TV awaits the Hawkeyes again this Saturday night, 6:30 kick on NBC, facing Michigan State. All the turmoil going on as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, September 27th. They fired Mel Tucker, their head coach, today, and we'll cover all that at another time. But Mel Tucker no longer there. My question to you as a former player, when you face a team like this coming in, and I know you got homecoming next week, and the Hawks are trying to block that out, get rid of Penn State's game last week. Is this the kind of thing that can at times galvanize a team like Michigan State, who's been in this turmoil all year long with their head coaching situation? Now they're moving away from their head coach. Is this something where guys can go, okay, now we can focus on football, thank goodness we got a game this week? Or how do you play this if you're the Hawks coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you play it. I guess I could see it doing either or. It certainly can galvanize a group, or it can completely cause them to throw in the white towel. I think, the Hawkeye experience is in the last 2, 3, 4 years when we've hit major adversity, we don't throw in the white towel. So I would assume we're buckling down and getting ready for another Big Ten opponent.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because there's so much on the periphery, as you and I know we talk about each week. If it's not one thing, it's another, it's another. They got enough to worry about with themselves. An uncharacteristic game from the Hawkeyes as far as really getting 3-1 time of possession for Penn State against the Hawks. 45 minutes plus to the Hawkeyes, barely 14 and a half or around 14 and a half minutes. Plays 3-1. Penn State ran almost 100 plays, James. That Hawkeye defense, no excuses, but they were obviously a ragtag outfit by the end of the game, but didn't give up any huge plays, but still that 31-0 defeat. Hawks had some uncharacteristic penalties, some turnovers, so time to flush that and move on. So you go inside the QB1 quarterback, you've been there, former Hawkeye quarterback. What is Cade McNamara and his guys, what are they talking about on the offensive side of the ball in their meeting rooms this week going into the game, James?
Yeah, no, I think it was just one of those games where the bad plays connected it continuously for us, and it hurt us in all three phases. We talk about playing all three phases, and none of the phases really gelled together last Saturday. But I mean, it starts with you're going to look at a lot of tape, and it's good tape. One of my favorite videos out there is it's a video called Good, and it talks about basically the cliff notes is when things go bad, you learn stuff. And so there's plenty to learn from last Saturday. That's good. It should be utilized going forward. And ultimately, it's wash it, it's correct it, and it's flush it because you got another good opponent coming in Saturday.
Absolutely. So it is time to stay focused and ready. All is not lost. And as it was pointed out earlier on this show with John Steppe of the Gazette, the schedule does start to ease up a little bit. You're not going to face a top 5 nationally ranked team and a defense like Penn State every week. So hopefully this is an opportunity that the Hawks can savor against Michigan State, James.
Yeah, no, I think I'm sure there's a frenzy out there and people overcomplicate things, but Coach Ferentz's comment, I mean, you block, you tackle, you throw, you catch. We can make it super complicated, but you got to execute. We didn't execute well enough on Saturday, but it doesn't mean that it's if we ran a double reverse, it would have been any different type deal. So ultimately, it comes down to making the plays consistently. We didn't do it Saturday against a good opponent. We got another Big Ten opponent, and it's connecting those good plays. It's connecting them, which is key. One or two obviously are nice, but it's connecting them, and then connecting all three phases is what leads to victories, especially against good teams in the Big Ten, which is the majority of them.
Well, you know, you've pointed this out many times in the past, as has your cohort, James Morris, on the defensive side of the ball, former Hawkeye linebacking great. The way Kirk Ferentz plays, and this shouldn't be news to anybody going into year 25, 25 years as an assistant, but also as a head coach, so 25 plus years in the coaching realm at Iowa. Every game, like James has pointed out and you have, it's every game is close. You're going to either win one close or lose one close. So sometimes it doesn't even matter the level of competition. That is the scheme and the way the Hawks play this, especially under Coach Kirk Ferentz. So again, I know a lot of people, as you mentioned, complain about Brian Ferentz and the offense and the drive for 325 and the points average is below 25 points a game. Now it's at 21 and three, a little over 21 points a game. Let's just play football, and I think you nailed it right there, you and James Morris in the past. The games are going to be played the way they are, and that's the style of football you know as a quarterback, but also they're playing in today's game, James.
Well, we said this a lot last year. I mean, does anything matter more than wins? Like, does it matter more than wins? Like, if we win 3-0 every game, I'm sure there's going to be people so unhappy, but if we're 12-0, which we can't be now, obviously, it's. I mean, what are we trying to do? We're trying to win games. So, you start here and you say, wow, if we ended up this season 11-1, and I'm not making that prediction, but it's like, would we be happy? Yeah, we would. We haven't lost any opportunity that we came into the year with outside of going undefeated. Well, we're not going to be undefeated, but it's about winning games. I don't really care. Coach Ferentz doesn't really care. Fans shouldn't really care how you win the games. It's tough every week. And speaking to your first point, it's one of the things I think I most quickly realized when I came to Iowa. The margin for victory is small. Yep. There's some saying of like one play doesn't lose a game. That's true, but like 3 plays definitely can. The margin of victory is small. Every team's good. Every team has great players, and you gotta win all those little battles. And I look forward to us bouncing back here this week, back in Kinnick for a night game.
I do too. I couldn't agree more. And Bill Snyder, always a former Hawkeye assistant before your time, but under Hayden Fry, and then went on to great success as a College Football Hall of Fame head coach at K-State. And he always said too, there's 11 players on the field at the same time. If 6 of our guys win those 11 battles, we'll win the game. So as you mentioned, it's the small little battles continually, and I'm not trying to sell anybody a bag of goods here, but I agree. I don't think that that's any surprise to anyone. That's how ball is played here, football at the University of Iowa. And James, as always, I thank you for your perspective and taking us inside QB1's helmet. Always great seeing you. We'll catch up with you again next week, folks. He's James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback. Thanks, James.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
My pleasure as always. For James Vandenberg, Sean Bock, and John Steppe, my production partner Michael Merrick, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.